This working model is patterned after a drawing that was seen on the wall of the Henry Ford Museum during the 1960s. This configuration is thought to be the last version of Joseph Henry's rocking beam motor, which he first designed in 1831. This model is circa 1837, and specifically it has a long horizontal steel bar which was magnetized. This is a long steel bar. The horizontal bar in this model is actually non-magnetic stainless steel. It reacts like it is magnetized by the addition of two neodymium magnets, which were placed in milled blind holes beneath the bar in the vicinity in the ends of the rotor. The upper face of the magnets is north on one end and south on the other end, so that it appears to be a long magnetic bar, just like Henry's 1837 model. Not having any way to accurately scale this model from his originals, it appears that the rotor is slightly shorter than the 10 inches plus referred to in some literature. The batteries you see contain nothing and are just there to make it look like the picture, although no evidence had been found as to the battery dimension. The capital A-shaped wood supports were intentionally modified to make it easier to assemble and disassemble during the fabrication and testing phases. Therefore, the projections at the bottom are for threaded machine screws. The steel rod is only 1/2 inch in diameter, as no accurate end dimension could be found until after this model was fabricated. The number of turns in the single rotor coil are approximately 750 turns of number 22 American wire gauge, which is the wire size on hand. There's no other reason for choosing this wire size. The coil resistance is between 2.5 and 3 ohms. No accurate meter was used for this test. The floor cups are evidently made of stainless steel, as they have not rusted and are magnetic. The base is 24 inches long. It may be the original device did not have this base this long, as the batteries did not rest on one. If the batteries did not. Mercury could not be used in the cups, as was possible in Henry time. First vinegar was tried, and later it was found that just plain tap water without adding salt worked fine. The cups sit firmly on brass slugs because there is a ring magnet beneath the false cover of each battery. The slug is drilled and tapped to accept an all-thread brass rod. There are wires from each of these points to the electronics, and you can see at the dip wires merely shorts two cups together. This provides a signal to the electronic circuit to turn on. These wires just go to the electronics. Now it won't run as it is now until we put water in the cups. Now we turn the switch. The dippers are not connected to the coil. They just short between the two cups, and that signal goes to the electronics. Every effort was made to make this model have the physical appearance of Henry's 1837 version. But by necessity, tricks had to be employed to make it function, like using electronics to actually conduct the coil current instead of the liquid in the cups, which was mercury. The dippers are not connected to any coil as in Henry's devices. Each dipper is really just a loop of wire, and when they dip into the water in both cups, they merely trigger the small MOSFET rated at only 400 milliamps, and this one triggers a much larger MOSFET which conducts at 3 to 4 amps. To get the current up to the coil on the rotor, there are two small wire gauge wires that come from the electronics up through the wooden base into the back left side of the front wooden A support. There's a 1/4 inch wide router groove up the slope part of the A support. Now here comes the real tricky part. A hole is drilled at an angle up to the bearing area of the shaft which supports the rotor. Two sleeve bearing supports support the shaft, but the shaft is a hollow brass tube, 1/4 inch in diameter. The wires go into one end of this shaft. Near the middle of the shaft, a small hole where the wires come out and are connected to two ends of the single coil on the rotor. A couple of spaces on each side of the rotor keep it centered and hide the two wires. Not all the snake paths have been covered up at this time, so if you know where to look, you can see where the deception is. That's all about it, folks. This model was constructed by Bert Sawyer Consulting, Arcadia, California. Email bscac1@sbcglobal.net.